Here with us now in our New York studio that I just referenced is Andrij Dobriansky. Now, he is the chair of UN Affairs, the Ukrainian World Congress, and as I mentioned a moment ago, was in a meeting with Zelenskyy after that speech. And a day after, President Trump seemed to shift on the war, said, all right, Ukraine can win this war. So I wonder.
The Ukraine team is very happy.
I bet. That's the first thing I assumed.
Yeah.
How does Zelenskyy feel today versus yesterday?
I had a meeting with the foreign minister when he arrived on Sunday, and he said, things are moving, things are moving. I had no idea what we would hear. We saw the Truth Social more than anything. But within the meeting, apparently, the entire Ukraine team said this is the language he was using with us.
Trump.
We were on the same, President Trump, President Zelenskyy, on the same page. And President Trump is seeing what's happening on the battlefield. We're hearing talk about the new Ukrainian long-range missiles, but it's those drones. The drones have been targeting Russia specifically, and he has seen the fall in production from Russian facilities. What they're doing is they're specifically using the sanctions that already exist. We've had the conversations about where more sanctions. Well, there are sanctions on specific weapons or parts manufacturers for oil refineries. Those are the areas that are being targeted, and you can see a drop-off in Russian oil production. And President Trump knows that's the way you cripple an economy. And he also knows that his LNG production is going through the roof for the United States. It'll be a record year in 2025.
So in other words, when Trump, and this is the Ukrainian interpretation you're saying, says that Ukraine can win, you think he really believes that because of the economic trends that are starting. So his idea would be, let's accelerate those trends, better for U.S. LNG exports, liquefied natural gas, and Russian oil going down. So the trend that has started needs to be accelerated. Yeah,
and this is the thing that President Trump has been looking for. He's always been looking for a win. You know, he liked the Iran operation. He likes big home runs. And with Ukraine, from the very beginning of his administration, this time, it's been intractable. He thought he could have a negotiation. That's clearly not where we're going here. We're going for some kind of thing that can push the Russians to finally say, okay, hands up, we'll talk, we'll do something. And this strategy, helping Ukraine actively cut down on the oil manufacturing. We heard how he wants Europe stop buying oil, and it's really two countries that are doing it, Slovakia and Hungary, that he can call directly. But the point is that the United States seems to be increasing its LNG, Russia is dropping off, and in the end, Trump sees a victory in sight.
Yeah, he could call them directly. I mean, Orban, particularly, has a very good relationship with
100%.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see if he does that. Because that's what we've been trying to figure out since he said this. What's the next step?
Right.
And A, on that, but B, when this happened yesterday, you said it was the same in the room as it was on social media. Were they surprised to see Trump kind of come around? Seemed like Zelenskyy was.
I think they were thinking that it's going to be a good meeting that had good vibes going in. There wasn't any rhetoric outside. You know, Trump sometimes has social media posts beforehand. Maybe he says something on the news about Zelenskyy, et cetera. That was quiet for a while. So they felt good that they weren't going to be ambushed. And frankly, they saw that President Trump bought into this. President Trump is on board. But it depends on the Ukrainian army. Keep getting supplies, doing the right thing. It doesn't mean a whole lot of more missiles. President Zelenskyy today in the hall said, you know, you keep talking about how many missiles the other army has. I got drones that can fly 2,000, 3,000 meters. So they're happy with what they're doing right now. And it looks like President Trump is as well.
But there's a real belief that this is winnable.
Yes.
I don't know if there was doubt creeping in would be how you would describe it, or how would you describe the change? Like, how were people in Ukraine feeling yesterday morning versus today? What did they think was going to happen versus what did they think now?
Well, it's always, you know, cross your fingers when President Zelensky's in the White House. It's always make sure that there's a lot of thank yous in the speech. Even in President Zelensky's speech, you know, he referenced the assassination attempt on Trump in Butler. He referenced the fact that a Ukrainian woman was stabbed in North Carolina. He referenced the themes that President Trump is familiar with. Yeah. And so it's not just the private, it's also the public messaging that seems to be more and more President Zelenskyy and President Trump are reading from the same script or reading from the same hymnal.
Zelenskyy, he learned from that Oval Office meeting.
Absolutely. This is a much closer relationship. And everybody from, you know, the top on down who's in that meeting or around the circle, they will demonstrate, they will tell you, this is a different relationship, and they are seeing victory. Not just oh my God, Russia has so many drones, Russia has a lot more people. Russia is actually vulnerable right now, and they can taste it.
But the fear must be, correct me if I'm wrong, that Trump could switch back the other way as quickly as he switched this way.
I think that's what most European leaders think. They have a different way of working than Trump. They have a system, they get together, they have a summit, they all agree on doing something. Maybe that stuff gets done or not, but they try to stick to an agenda. Trump, yes, everybody thinks he can do one thing one day, one thing another. That means that he's more nimble in terms of his response. But once he decides that something can be changed, that he can see victory, he can then convince his entire government. He can convince the Secretary of Defense or other people who are in favor of, taking less weapons for Ukraine, maybe slow it down. If he sees a victory, he can say, let's go full on. Let's end it this year. And then maybe he gets that Nobel Prize.
Well, that's what, yeah, certainly he wants that. I'm sure Zelenskyy would write up the recommendation for him if we can end this war and have it be winnable for Ukraine. Very interesting insights, especially the part, I think, on the loss on the Russian side for oil, potential upside of the American side for liquefied natural gas. That's an interesting angle. Win-win. All right, Andrij, thank you. Andrij Dobriansky met with